And welcome back to the Scott and Laws show. He is Scott.
Yes, he is. I am.
And I am Laws, and I can confirm this. And we're kicking it right back off with choice number 7 of mine. Lucky for some, who knows?
Yeah, Two Dicks Talking Bollocks. They're top 10 films ever made. And I think we've covered 10, 9, and 8 respectively in our top 10s. And I think this is how I can see this kind of going from here. Do contend if you feel necessary to do so. I think we should do 7 and 6 each, which is going to be basically 4 films. And then maybe we'll do the same again for 5 and 4. And then we'll do our top 3 in a 4th final part of the quadrilogy.
In a tour de force.
Yeah, I think it might work best that way. So this one and the next one might be a little bit shorter than normal, but then the top 3 will probably be a little bit longer than normal. That's how I'm seeing it panning out.
Okay, I like it. I like yet more planning on
just because I looked ahead, Lars, and my number 5 and number 4 might well be the 2 I talk the longest about, I think.
Wow.
So that's why I think if we both do our 5 and 4 in their own episode, it might work out best. And then the top 3, surely that's just a dynamite way to end things, isn't it, in this film series?
Oh, certainly.
So without further ado, please do, Lars, take us into your number 7.
Okay, now number 7 is Inglourious Basterds.
Yeah. Okay. I thought this might appear.
Now, it's the double Quentin heading at you, but this is why I said sort of almost like classic Quentin, because this is more from his latter day offerings. I got a lot of time for Django Unchained, and I have watched. What's the damn new one called? The one where they're in Hollywood.
Oh, it's just Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, isn't it, or something?
Yeah,
like that?
there we go. But
and then what was the Hateful Eight as well? I haven't seen that either.
Oh yeah, Hateful Eight. I do like Hateful Eight. Not a perfect film, but yeah, here we go. Anyway, once again, we're talking about different films. The one we're here to talk about.
I know. Am I right in thinking this is both our favourite Tarantino film?
Yeah. By the sounds of it, yeah.
Awesome. That's a cool thing to have in common.
I have to almost sort of guiltily admit something now, which is just before we, to peel the curtain back slightly. When we started talking today before we started recording, Scott said to me, "Think about what's your favorite scene in all of cinema," and I can't talk about Inglourious Basterds without talking about my favorite scene in all of cinema, and it's the starting scene to Inglourious Basterds.
Now, the interrogation with the floorboards.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
What a scene! What a scene!
I was going to say, I mean, obviously, we I'm going to try and be careful of spoilers as we have done, but at the same time, as it's the opening scene that sort of almost sets the tone for the rest of the film, I don't think I'm giving much away. But yeah, basically, we're talking about a French man. He's outside chopping wood. His 3 daughters are doing chores, and a Nazi car sort of comes over the horizon. A general gets out. This is the first time I'd ever been aware of Christoph Waltz, and I love that man. My God. Yeah. But you hate Christoph Waltz as Hans Lander, as a smirking, smiling snake in the grass that will use any sort of trick, any sort of advantage to his disposal to get where he needs to go, whether it's for Hitler's ends or his own. Anyway, he approaches this farmhouse. He's been appointed with tracking down, Jews in France, in wartime France, and he's heard that this man is harboring some Jews. Now he turns up, and there's only seemingly him.
I just want to confirm that was Jews.
Yes, yeah.
Because I heard juice, but then of course I of course know that it's to do with Jews. But in case anyone's thinking, harboring some juice, okay, it's not juice, it's juice.
Yeah, it's not a crime to harbor juice. No,
I don't believe so. I don't think it's ever been a crime to harbor juice.
No. I'm glad we've got that established. Unless you're an enemy of Tropicana, I guess. Anyway, so basically, he approaches and he comes in with his soldiers, sort of has a quick look around, says, everything seems to be okay. I'd just like to have a quick sit down and a chat, perhaps over a glass of milk, because he's a dairy farmer. Yeah, okay, sure. So he gets one of his daughters to pour him a glass of milk, and they sit down. He sends his soldiers outside, and it really affably starts going about its business. And again, without trying to word for word go over the scene and again spoil it, the genius of this scene and in many ways this film is the sort of the peeling back of the way things seem. It seems like he's safe. It seems like all should be well. He's, sort of talking to him and, I'm just going to fill in this book, just for my records, just so we can cross you off and we don't have to bother you again. And slowly but surely starts to twig that not only is he harboring Jews, but they are actually underneath the floorboards in which they sit. And
yes.
It basically, boils down to he asks if the gentleman can speak English, as he has heard that he can speak English. And he switches to English because he knows that the Jews underneath most likely do not speak English.
Sure.
And all of a sudden, to use a very, very English phrase, he turns on a sixpence and becomes not necessarily threatening, but very sort of cold and, ruthless and sort of goes, right, okay. Once he knows that they can't hear what he's, can't understand what he's saying, very much sort of, right, the Jews are under the floorboards, aren't they? I'm going to call my men back in. We're going to pretend that they're your three daughters coming back in. And once I say goodbye, they're going to open fire. And, because I've done what I need to do, we are then going to leave you. And, it's then that Shoshana, one of I would probably say the lead character, she manages to make her escape as the others of her family are ruthlessly slaughtered by these SS officers. She runs off into the French countryside, running for her life.
Yeah.
As Hans Lander sort of bids her a cheery sort of, au revoir, Shoshana. And it's really, it's his performance in that scene is a force of nature.
This is really interesting, Lars, because that's, I think you said, your favorite scene that you can think of in a film of all time.
Yes.
And it shares a lot of similarities with mine, which I won't be revealing until the very end of the top 10, because actually it doesn't feature in any of my top 10. It features in a film. You little tease. It features in a film I mentioned a while ago, to be honest. But it's that idea of someone slowly turning on a sixpence and the tension involved in that, and that you think maybe you have an understanding of something, and then it changes in a way that you weren't prepared for, and you feel it. It's so visceral, and it's what an introduction to Christoph Waltz's character and just his acting,
Oh yes,
because the only other film I can think of him off the top of my head is Downsizing, where he plays a very different character in that.
He's the other bounty hunter in Django Unchained.
Oh yes, of course, he's in Django. Yeah.
And what else is he in? Anyway, we're not doing a Christoph Waltz career retrospective. But
no, we're not. But I remember Mike Myers being in this film as a general quite brilliantly.
Oh, yeah,
it almost takes you a few minutes to clock it's Mike Myers. But yeah, the tension permeates throughout this film, particularly in the scene we talked about. Also later on in a bar, sort of with a game of cards that's going on.
Oh yes, yeah.
Oh man, yeah, it's my favorite Tarantino film. I'm glad to hear it's yours too. It's one thing we seem to have in common in the film world, isn't it?
Sure. And I'm not even a big sort of war film guy, so it's not necessarily even that element that I'm particularly into. I'm always interested in characters that I can identify with motivations that I can understand and support. And definitely stopping the Nazis is got to be one of them.
Oh yeah, sure.
But yeah, it's almost a little bit like Pulp Fiction in the way that there's also Brad Pitt's Aldo Rain leading the bastards, the titular bastards, who are a group of, I think, Jewish American soldiers who are sent to essentially guerrilla warfare against the Nazis in occupied France, and they take pride in their sort of Apache tactics and scalping their victims, and hits and runs and disrupting supply lines and just anything they can do to essentially kill Nazis. I mean, there's that brilliant bit where Brad Pitt's character Aldo Rain is like, by signing up to this company, you personally owe me a debt. of 100 scalps, and I want my scalps. There's so many charming little points. I mean, even right down to the fashion of the film is so very authentic. There's another scene with Hans Lander and Shoshana where they're sort of having almost afternoon tea, and he comes in sort of unexpectedly and sort of makes himself a part of proceedings. And there's I can never think of another way where someone has offered someone cream and it seemed so sinister. But I can assure you it is. It brings it out to such a monumental conclusion. And again, there's another part towards the end where Brad Pitt's character sort of says, "I think this might be my masterpiece." And I
is this out in the woods?
Yes.
Yes.
I think that is Tarantino speaking to the audience, and I agree. Absolutely.
Do you know what? I'm really interested. I mean, if you haven't already noticed, guys, just from the fact we've been doing these, I do love trying to count down things and trying to think, well, what is what is my favorites in order and things like that. I do like, in that sense, indexing things. And then so that kind of then turns to, well, I wonder how Tarantino would rank his movies. Has he ever been asked the question? Would he want to deal with a question like that? I get the feeling some people would love to reflect. And you do hear this, where people will talk about what their favourite things were, favourite acting roles or favourite films. I'd love to know what Tarantino thought of this in comparison to the rest of his repertoire, because we clearly seem to agree it was the pinnacle so far, at least, of his achievements. And I'd love to know what he thought about it and where it ranks.
I think this is quite possibly the only film that is a direct crossover, certainly so far. And I think that tells you something. That's two people with so various different sort of degrees of appreciation for lots of different things to come together and both say, yeah, this is something special, this film.
It really is, yeah. And I don't hear anyone else really celebrate it like we do in his career so much, Obviously, Pulp Fiction, of course, I can understand why that's lauded time and time again, and Reservoir Dogs and even Django, but for me, yeah, absolutely. Inglourious Basterds is not talked about enough. I'm glad you and I have just talked about it and given it the attention it deserves. And for anyone listening who hasn't seen it, who likes Tarantino movies, or indeed, even if you're not particularly a fan of Tarantino movies, this, of course, has elements of his makeup as a director. Of course it does. But it's a magnificent film in its own right, regardless of who directed it. And even if you're not into the idea of war, I presume not many people are into the idea of Nazis, really. But I would say watch it, because it's stunning, absolutely stunning. And I'll say it again, ladies and gentlemen, criminally underrated. And I think there's a drinking game coming out of those two words, isn't there?
But there's some really great acting performances, and sometimes not even in the main characters.
Yeah, and I mean, because I almost forgot that Brad Pitt was in it. Such is the ensemble of just the brilliance in this film.
I mean, as we could do this with almost every film on this list, but I mean, Brad Pitt, Christoph Waltz, Michael Fassbender, Eli Roth, Diane Kruger, Daniel Bruhl, who is someone I've certainly become more aware of since this film, and Melanie Laurent, who plays Shoshana, the main character, the Jew who escapes the extermination attempt at the start. A really interesting, sort of diverse bunch of characters, and fascinating film.
I'm really glad you said that. I was hoping you would. I thought you would, to be honest. We've discussed this film before, probably not to this extent, really, but we have discussed this film before, and it will go on the list for us, even though we've both seen it.
Yeah, do it.
All right, shall I bring us into my number 7?
Please do.
Okay, now this film was a 2000 film, so turn of the century, or millennium, and this film blew my mind, perhaps more so than any other film.
Wow.
It's the only film that I have immediately rewatched again. And I mean immediately. I finished my first viewing and I press play immediately again. I think Shutter Island, I might have done that with. And for those who've seen Shutter Island, you'll know why, because there's a revelation that changes everything. And it's fascinating to see how it plays out once you know what that is.
Yeah, great film.
And even The Village, again, for those who are already beginning the drinking game that I was talking about, get one ready, because The Village is also criminally underrated. And that has a twist revelation that makes you want to watch the whole thing again as well. But no, we're not talking about those ones, but we are talking about Christopher Nolan, who came up before, of course. So Batman, Inception, Interstellar is another one of his, Tenet. These are all mind-bending psychological thrillers. But Lars, I'm about to talk about my favourite of all of them. And again, I'd love to know where he ranks this in his list. I really would.
Oh, yeah.
Memento. Right. What a film we're talking about here, guys. So Leonard Shelby is played by Guy Pearce, and he's injured trying to protect his wife from an attack at their home, and she actually dies, and he suffers brain damage and subsequent short-term memory loss. Think of it as like an extreme amnesia. He can remember everything up until the attack, but as a result of these injuries, he's incapable of forming any new memories. And this film is about him sort of trying to piece stuff together, trying to hunt down the killer. And of course, he has to be incredibly methodical about doing so because of his newfound condition. So a system of notes scribbled on the back of Polaroids. He tattoos himself. Presumably, well, it's a random thing to have learned without need to in his early life, but we'll let that go. Let's just say he already knew how to tattoo himself. And so it's really a psychological, I guess, detective thriller. And he has two companions along the way, both of which were in The Matrix, actually. I can't remember. The lady who played Trinity. Oh, yeah. And I can't remember the name of the chap. I should have looked this up. I apologise. But you'll recognise him. He was one of the crew in The Matrix.
Oh, yeah. He's also in The Sopranos, isn't he? And it's going to really bug me that I don't know who he is.
Oh, I'm sorry, guys. Let me look this up quickly. It's Joe something. Is it Joe Pantalone or Pantalini or something?
Yeah, Pantagliano or something.
Yeah, that's here we go.
Because he's Ralph.
Joe Pantoliano.
Yeah, he's Ralph in oh my God, I just said it, The Sopranos. Thank you.
And in this, he plays a guy called Teddy, and yes, Carrie-Anne Moss is the lady who played Trinity, who plays Natalie in this. So Natalie and Teddy, right? They are in this film Leonard's companions, but of course they may or may not be on his side and may or may not have an ulterior motive, and you don't quite know. Now, this is what makes this film the piece of work that I think it is, and I'll try and find the best way to explain in this. It's told backwards, so it's in reverse chronological order, and it starts with the final scene, which obviously runs forward during the scene. You know, we're not watching people walk backwards going, but of course it starts with the final scene, and then it jumps back to the preceding scene, and you're not told this is happening. You have to work it out for yourself. And so, for example, the first scene kind of involves Joe. I've already forgotten how to pronounce his name. Is it Pantoliano?
Yeah, we'll go with that.
He walks into a hotel lobby and goes, "Lenny," right? And you're not quite sure why. And then that scene ends, and then it jumps to the preceding scene, but you're not quite sure that it's done that until it reaches the end of that scene, and you see the same thing happen again. He opens the door and goes, "Lenny," and then you kind of realize, oh, like that's what this is doing. And the reason it's so clever, and I can feel how much my voice has gone up just trying to convey this, right? The reason it's so clever is, of course, what it does is it throws you immediately into Leonard's world of confusion about what's happening and what's just happened. So it puts you in the same mindset of this guy who can't make sense of what's happening, what's just happened. You know, it's such a smart way to bring you into his world. And so, of course, this continues throughout the film, and you see these little moments twice, you know, at the start and end of the scene. And to make it even more interesting, because this is the kind of guy Nolan is, isn't it? He sort of intersperses these with a series of scenes that actually run in normal chronological order, but these ones are in black and white. And they, as those ones run forwards and the scenes in color run backwards, they simultaneously reveal more and more about Leonard and the investigation that's going on. And by the time we reach the end, / beginning of the film, we finally kind of have all the information we need to piece things together. But it's not necessarily easy to do so. It's quite an ambiguous ambiguity in this film. And what I'd say is it really doesn't insult your intelligence. It makes you think all the way through. It completely blows your mind, like I said at the start. And actually, it's quite fitting, but something I said at the start, I'm sort of saying at the end. It really is one of the smartest pieces of writing I've ever seen. And when you consider the magnitude and status of the rest of Christopher Nolan's catalogue, this for me is just totally on another level. I love Inception. I think it's great. I really respected The Dark Knight. I can't remember if he did Batman Begins, but I think he's done others in the Batman series. I haven't seen Tenet yet. But, for me, Memento is... And again, I always thought Memento was sort of top 5 material until I came to seriously think about it and compile it. And here it is at number 7, which blows my mind again. You know, this film just continues to blow my mind. The more I even try and recollect the film, the more it kind of messes with me in my head. Not in a bad way. It's very deliberately calculated to mess with you. And like I say, you know, it would be hard to even begin to comprehend what it would be like for someone to go through life, dealing with the death of his spouse in such a horrific manner, and then B, having to contend with this condition that you almost can't even realize that you have because of your inability to make memories off the back of that incident. So it's handled in such a way that is absolutely fascinating. I really can't see how it could have been done better. And this is very much a cat and mouse type of thing, Lars, in two directions. Like I say, you've got Carrie-Anne Moss's character and Joe Pantoliano's character, and you're never quite sure what ulterior motives are. And of course, you do find out, but then you're not even sure if you do think you found out when something happens.
Well, and of course, when you're dealing with someone with memory loss as well, you have to acknowledge that the narrator in the film might be, an unreliable one. He can't make new memories, and that's the genius of it. The disorienting tactics that they employ. It doesn't obviously give you amnesia, but it really puts you in the shoes of the protagonist, and that sort of who can you trust? What can you trust? To be paranoid to the extent where you've extensively tattooed yourself with exactly what you know to be true, so that you can sort of try and stay on top of it. It's really powerful.
Yeah, and all he really knows is that he's looking for a guy called John G, or a James G, or a Jimmy G, and that's tattooed. And yeah, I don't really want to go into it anymore because, I mean, I could give away things in this, and you'd forget about it the moment you started watching it, because it's almost blunt trauma to the brain, and it shifts you into this other world when you're watching this, or at least it certainly was for me. Like I say, this is the film maybe of everything. There's one other I can think of. Well, no, in fact, there's probably two. In fact, no, there's probably about 6 because we're on number 7 here. I think all the upcoming 6 have blown my mind in different ways, but I really do think that Memento, and I can't believe it's number 7, sort of blew my mind the most on that first viewing. I had no idea that it was going to be like that at all. I can't remember what made me buy it. I think maybe it was just off the strength of the blurb on the back of the DVD as part of an HMV offer or something, Sure. And I got it home, and I'll never forget the experience I had watching it. And like I say, such was that experience that I watched it again straight away. And for some reason, I don't seem to have it currently in my collection. I must have lost it, or it got damaged or something. But all the more reason for me to buy it in UHD or 4K, And we should watch it together, Luz, because that brings me to my next question, which is: have you seen Memento?
Oh yes, no, I've definitely seen Memento. It's certainly one that was on the fringes. But at the same time, in not trying to flood my responses, because really I could quite easily have done a top 10 of favorite comic book films. But there was, quite a few sort of similar films, and I didn't want, everything to be all sort of cat and mouse. And unfortunately, for Memento, for me personally, it's just got edged out. But it is for me an incredible piece of filmmaking, really. I mean, to keep on top of, right, in this scene we're doing it from this perspective, and this scene, he knows this, and in this scene he doesn't, and all that sort of thing. To the actual concept of filming it the way that they did, to sort of mark it out as much as it is marked out, it's such a genius, really.
I can't believe Lars, the fan of cat and mouse films that he is, has admitted this. I mean, what's better than this, man? Tom and Jerry, I suppose. But wow. Do you know what? I quite liked Mousetrap. That was with Lee Evans, right?
Yeah.
That has one of the funniest scenes of all time at the start with the coffin that goes down the staircase.
Oh yeah.
Oh, so right, that is Memento. I get the feeling there's probably quite a few people that haven't seen this film, and it's for me as a psychological thriller. There are a few things better, and of course I will get to tell you what they are. Definitively, of course.
Ironically, I think it's one of those films that so many people have watched and then forgotten about.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's beautiful twisted irony there. But
Amnesia, baby.
I can't understand how. Maybe because in some ways it's like tripping, really. You're going through this incredible thing with your brain and trying to work out. Maybe just you were unable to kind of formulate memories of those things while it was happening, and then you get to the end of the film and it's like, what have I just watched? And by the next day you're like, well, I remember it was to do with memory, but
it's not a hand-holdy film, is it? But I like almost anything that's willing to sort of test the boundaries a little bit.
This is very challenging, this film, very challenging, more so than Inception. If you think Inception was confusing, then you ain't seen nothing, baby.
No, I would agree with that.
Yeah, this is, but it's not his magnum opus for that reason. It genuinely is, I think, the best thing he's ever done. I don't know if he actually wrote it. If he came up with the idea, I'd assume he did, but I should have looked into this. But if he did, then this is the thing that makes Christopher Nolan a genius for me. And Lars, do you mind if I quickly pause here? I'm time for the toilet, and then we'll get to your number 6.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. All right. Cheers. Bye. Lars, your number 6, please.
Coming in at number 6 is a treasured film of my childhood, and a film that I can still happily watch today and get a lot from it, and that is Jurassic Park. Okay. Now, I was so iconic is the music that I was going to almost attempt to do a sort of self-trumpeting version of it, and then I thought, I don't want to get sued, so let's not go there. But yes, Jurassic Park. I mean, as a kid who went through the dinosaur phase, which I think almost all young boys do.
Yeah, I think that one really is something that everyone goes through.
Yeah,
and many never grow out of.
And that element of, there were these fantastical creatures that sort of owned the world, really, that, were about thousands of years before we were ever around. It's so fascinating. And that element of fantasy come real, really, it struck a nerve with me, and it never really finished. I mean, I'm still interested in the franchise. Is it quite what Jurassic Park originally was? No, but can I still enjoy it? Yeah, of course. So, but yes, Jurassic Park itself. I mean, it gets to a point now where we're really nailing down films that are just sort of, oh my God, I love this film. I just want to, book a hotel room and get some illegal materials and just go to town. You know what I mean? It's just amazing.
I'm not sure I do know what you mean. I don't. My mind ran off in a different direction probably with that.
I think you know exactly what I mean.
Oh, Ray Winston's back.
Yeah.
Imagine if Ray Winston had been in Jurassic Park.
That would be great. But what if he was like Dennis Nedry, the fat guy who gets killed by the spitting dinosaur?
Yeah. You didn't say the magic words, son.
Yeah. Get out of my way. Nah. Yeah.
And then sorry, no, go on. No, my mind's just ran off with Ray Winston now.
Yeah, all right, okay.
Deep into Ila Nublar, and I'm not going to do that. So please continue.
God. So yeah, I mean, honestly, I think I was going to say that the opening half an hour, but then the more I think of it, the opening probably hour of this film is almost sort of perfect viewing. The people who are assembled, the team, the archaeologists, and the kids, his own grandchildren, the guy John Hammond who's put it all together, and also we're talking about Jeff Goldblum once again as Ian Malcolm, and he's the one who talks about chaos and life finding a way.
Well, chaos theory is like a Jurassic. We're talking about subsequent films, Jurassic World, of course. And do you remember, Loz? I think we did go to see this at the cinema. Actually, this is one of the ones we went to see. And we discussed how many nods it had to the original. But one of the more subtle ones and one of the cleverer ones was actually to do with Jeff Goldblum talking about chaos theory. And in the original, of course, he's seemingly sort of flirting with Laura Dern, and he's got her hand, and he drops the bit of water, and he's talking about he's talking about chaos theory, explains chaos theory. And then in Jurassic World, there's a scene where there's a guy with a gun trying to track down the Indominus Rex, and a drop of blood falls on his hand. And then a second drop of blood falls and rolls in another direction. And that was one of the more subtle nods to the original film, which I really enjoyed.
It is crammed full, Jurassic World, of nods to Jurassic Park.
It's got a great deal of love for it. And who hasn't got a great deal of love for this film? I do. I love this film so much. And I want to listen to you talk about it more.
Well, again, it's it's really that an all-star cast. I think the graphics of the time stand up shockingly well for a film that came out in 1993.
I think the graphics or the CGI are better than the subsequent Jurassic World movies.
Yeah, quite possibly.
This was the first film, famously, to use CGI. And I'd love to watch this back on UHD. I think I did look into like the complete series on 4K Ultra DVD or whatever, and I don't think you can actually get it right now. But I'd love to watch this back, because that'll really hold that stuff up to account, as it were. Because my interpretation of seeing Jurassic Park in sort of Blu-ray DVD quality, and then seeing the new films at the cinema, is that Jurassic Park CGI was better. And a lot of people have commented on this. That the when Jurassic World, and who wasn't obsessed and hooked on the Jurassic World trailer? Everyone was on tenterhooks for that. And then when it came out and the mosasaur, people just thought something's wrong with this. It doesn't look as good as the originals did, and I still think that's the case. And I love the subsequent. I love all of the films in the franchise. I think Jurassic Park 3 was, have you got your shot glass at the ready? Criminally underrated. I really do. And I think, and my favourite since the original, Lars, is actually the most recent one, Jurassic World: Fallen Kingdom. I think. Really? Yes, really. Like I no one else seems to agree with me how good that was. Very cheesy. Very.
I hadn't heard good things. I didn't dislike it as much as I thought I might. But yeah, sorry.
No, I stand by my feelings about Jurassic World: Fallen Kingdom. I think it's great. It's very irritating at times, and unfortunately, it was directed in such a way that does follow these tropes of modern film and the cheesiness. So you have to leave that at the door and just enjoy what I think played out very darkly, and it was very much a real depiction of how we would go as a race, or with this technology dispensable to us. And Rafe Spall plays such a good villain in that film, and I think it was weirdly, in some ways, the most real since the original. I really do, and that's why I loved it so much. But get back on course. Sorry, Loz. We're talking about Jurassic Park. We're talking about another 90s film here, of course. So of course I love it. And
yeah, of course.
What more can I say right now?
I mean, I think it's really intriguing. I mean, the one of the prevailing sort of things that I took away from this, that when I think about Jurassic Park, it's the first time where I went to the cinema and it felt like my imagination had come alive. Before then I'd seen films and been sort of interested and that, but I have that undying feeling of sort of, oh my God, this, if I could have dreamt this up, then I would have, sort of thing. It was such a powerful realization. I think it's also really interesting to know, as much as they proceeded on with the CGI, that they also insisted on doing 50-50 CGI with practical effects.
Yes.
And I think that's illustrated no more and no better than the scene where, he's oh my God, Jeff Goldblum's character is trying to flirt with Laura Dern's character, and talking about chaos theory and all that. And oh my God, what's his character's name? Sam Neill.
Dr. Alan Grant.
Alan Grant, that's it. Thank you. He goes running off and he notices I think it's a triceratops that's been poisoned.
Oh, yeah.
And he goes and he sort of rests on the chest of this triceratops as it breathes in and out. And that sort of, he's seen the dinosaurs already, and they've both had that sort of wide-eyed sort of, oh my God, what is this? But that scene in particular, his face is sort of, this is actually a dinosaur that I can touch and I can interact with. This is literally my life's work, my dream come true. I think that's brilliant.
Yeah, exactly. And that is a physical set piece, that's happening. And then to sort of go back to what you said, even slightly earlier in the film, with Dr. Grant, and it's when he first lays eyes on one of these dinosaurs, and it's the scene in the Jeep,
yes.
excuse me, where he turns Laura Dern's head because they're brachiosaurs.
Yeah.
And if anyone wants that scene beautifully ruined, just Google Jurassic Park Melodica if you haven't already. It's wonderful. It's one of the funniest things I've ever seen. It really is in my top 5 funniest things on YouTube, that scene. And you could watch that and it wouldn't ruin it. But
I love how she has to claw the sunglasses out of her eyes because she can't believe what she's seeing,
Yeah, and of course that was CGI, and maybe that was even the first bit of proper CGI in the film. I don't know whether the scene, of course, with the brachiosaurs or brontosaurs. I'm not quite sure. I think actually that both names apply, don't they, for that species?
Yes,
sure.
Yeah.
Walking across the sort of lake or the reservoir type thing, and there are so many iconic scenes in this film. And I sort of remember going to the cinema to see this for the first time because it would have been 93. I think I'd have been about 6 or 7, I guess. And I do kind of remember, I think it was maybe even for my birthday, like a sort of birthday party type thing, that it would be at that age where we all went somewhere for pizza, and had cake or whatever.
Yeah.
And then we went to the cinema and we all sat in a row and just watched this unfold, the likes of which we'd never seen before. I think it was the first film. I don't know. I mean, I was not even sure what rating it was. I think just PG, wasn't it? But I think perhaps being at the age that I was, maybe this was the first film that sort of ventured into some degree of violence, I guess. But at that age, it's kind of the first film that I remember that really kind of seemed like an adult film. And goodness knows how many times I've watched this film down the years.
Well, it is, as we're trying to avoid sort of spoiling it for someone. I mean, again, it's, I would say, almost a family-friendly film in terms of, I think there's a little bit in there for everyone. I don't think that the violence in it is overly graphic.
Well, it's not if you watch it on TV at Christmas, and please don't anyone ever watch Jurassic Park at Christmas on TV. If you see the words ITV and Jurassic Park together, avoid it like the plague, because they'll cut out so much. Their excuse for cutting it out, of course, well, we're putting it on at 3 p.m. Think of the children. No. This was a PG film. This was always deemed suitable for children. This was released in the cinema. You were allowed to go and see it as a child all the way through. Don't give us that bollocks, please. This has been butchered to accommodate more fragrance adverts over Christmas.
Yes.
And so, please don't watch this film over Christmas. Watch it with the additional 7 or 8 minutes worth. That was everyone's intention with the film, which is still family friendly.
It's almost the perfect blockbuster, wouldn't you say? It's got wonder and adventure and threat and suspense and thrills and spills, action set pieces and cool special effects. I mean, what more do you want?
I know. So Jurassic Park, I'm glad to see that in there, Lars. And that was, what was that? Your number 6?
Number 6.
Number 6. Wow. Okay. Right, Lars. My number 6 is also a film that was.
I thought you were going to say it's also Jurassic Park. Then.
No, it's not Jurassic Park, but it's also a film that was like treasured from my childhood.
Ah,
yeah, yeah. Mm. This. Oh.
Right, stop rubbing your knees. Get on with it.
For sake, yeah, turning into Dick Reeves / Hannibal Lecter. This is a film which I've actually hinted at several times over previous episodes. I laid down some proverbial M&Ms to reference another classic film which we talked about earlier.
Not breadcrumbs. No, M&Ms.
No, I was thinking of E.T. You see. No, this isn't E.T. But this is a film that when
I've never watched E.T. in full, you know.
Good God, man. We need to, my respect for you, man, is diminishing like at a spectacular rate with some of the films that submerged you've never seen. Are we going to get to the end of this top 10? Because if I find out you haven't watched this, Lars, then trouble's brewing.
All right, okay. All right, well, we'll see. Roll the dice. So,
this is a film that when I was a lad, right, I grew up watching virtually every single day. And so, talking about my parents, probably hating me mention a film like Fear and Loathing. They probably already know what I'm talking about here, and they're probably having flashbacks as we speak if they're listening. Now, this is a film that I can't explain why I loved so much at the time, because I would have probably been maybe like 4, I don't know, when I first saw it. It just resonated, and I guess a lot of my love for this is attached to the power of the nostalgia of this, but I haven't actually said what the film is yet, and I will do in due course. But I think some people will know what it is already. If I say Disney, right, we're talking Dumbo. Let's just say it. This, for me, this came out in 1941.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean...
The animated version came out in 1941?
Yeah.
Wow. Speaking of Owen Wilson, wow.
Yeah, wow. Have you seen the oh no, let's not go into that right now.
Yeah,
just Google Owen Wilson tortoise or turtle, one of the two. Go off and do that in your own time. I'm not going to talk about it now. Right.
Bit of homework.
Homework. Yeah, report back with your findings next week. Right, Loz, I love Dumbo so much, if I haven't already made that abundantly clear. And I think a lot of it is attached to the power of the nostalgia of watching it when I did. Because if I watch it back now, which of course I have done, I've seen it recently, there are certain pieces of music and little moments and transitions that bring something back. They stir up this like amazing feeling of comfort. And objectively, do I think this is the best Disney film? Possibly. I think I talked at length about The Lion King, the original, and Fantasia, and I think they're definitely up there with this on the podium. I think these are the for me the definitive 3. But subjectively, Dumbo is my favourite Disney film and always will be. And we're talking about the original Dumbo here. I will talk a bit about the remake, as I did with The Lion King. Now, unlike, because this came out when it did, and I'll say it again, 1941. I mean, how long ago was that? 80 years? Yeah, I think 80 years exactly. So it's not too dialogue heavy, this film. It's much more to do with the power of imagery. In fact, this is the shortest Disney film ever. It clocks in at about 1 hour and 4 minutes. And I did rewatch the original about a year ago, and regardless of how I felt about it back then, which I've talked about, on recent viewing again, it's stunning, and it's heart-wrenching in a way that I think only Disney are capable of. People often talk of a scene in Bambi, which is very well known, or maybe like something in Watership Down, which I know has nothing to do with Disney. But there's a scene in Dumbo which involves his mother in jail, and she like cradles him through the bars in the window. And I mean, if that doesn't bring a tear to your eye when you're watching it as a whole, I don't know what will. People talk about like the Green Mile or Shawshank Redemption or something. I always think of this scene, to be honest, in film anyway. There's a couple of TV episodes in particular that just make me cry every time, but I'll get to them in due course. Again, not for this episode, Lars. So, and also it has kind of the type of sentiment which is kind of prominent in society at the moment, which is like celebrating individuality and beauty. But I think rather than beauty, this film asks kind of, what does ugly really mean? And Yeah, society, thankfully, nowadays is sort of moving towards the notion that difference is not a bad thing. But for many years, marketing has kind of told us otherwise, and I think it's had an effect down the years. But with this film, in this case, it's Dumbo has a strikingly large set of ears, and he's kind of outcast and exiled and ridiculed. And I suppose, curiously, this like sort of exists within the elephant kingdom because I don't know how much you know about elephants, Lars, but you've got Asian elephants who do have the smaller ears, but then the African ones do have much larger ears, which I guess have evolved to keep them cool, you know. So it weirdly touches on that in this too, I assume intentionally. But I suppose I should talk about the remake as well. I mean, it's not really a remake. It's more a reprisal because I was interested as soon as I heard it, A, because, of course, how much I love the original, but B, because Tim Burton was doing it. And I've got to say, it's actually pretty good. It goes in a distinctly different direction. And so, like I say, it's more a reprisal than a remake. It takes it in a very different direction in the second half. But it's enjoyable. And even for someone like me who loves the original as much as I do, it didn't ruin it at all. Worth watching, but definitely check out the original for like proper Disney magic. Again, like I said, with Lion King, if you've only seen the remake, like, for goodness sake, watch the original, please. That is Dumbo and Fantasia and the Lion King really are classic Disney at their best. And Loz, what have you got to say? I could go on about this film forever because I love it so much. It's got such nostalgic value. And yeah, like I say, even having watched it last year, it had such more an impact on me than I thought it would. I was almost worried, actually, that watching it after a little period of time where I'd started to forget how it unfolded, it would go down in my estimations and would be all but banished as just like something from my past, you know, something I liked for a period of time. But no, watching it last year, there were two elements to it. One was the nostalgia. And like I say, it's just little fleeting pieces of music. There's a choir that are involved in some of the soundtrack to this, and just hearing that and the shots of a train conjured, like I said, this amazing feeling of nostalgia, and with it, comfort and refuge. You know, it brought me back to a time where things were simpler, you know, and I could just sit in front of it. I could sit in front of this twice a day if I wanted to, and I didn't care what my parents thought about it. But then, no, it struck me again, you know, in a new light as just how wonderful a story this is. We talked about Disney post turn of the millennium, and there's no need for us to do that again here. This is 60 years or 59 prior to that turn of the millennium, and this is everything I think is to be truly celebrated about what Disney have done.
Well, I mean, you know, without me being a parent, it is something that I've always thought that really, with the original set of animated films, I would say the classics. I know you're a fan of the Aristocats. I must say I never actually got to see that film. I'd never seen Fantasia either, just whilst we're talking about not Disney films. I've not seen...
It's getting ridiculous, Lars, isn't it?
But I have seen Dumbo.
Okay. And the original?
Yes, the original, yeah. And of the set of what I consider the classic Disney animated films, actually, as much as I don't want to, that is the beautiful thing is that we have different opinions. It didn't make much impact on me as a kid. I was far more into the Jungle Book. That really had, I really vividly remember watching that and loving it. And the Robin Hood, where the Robin Hoods are played as a fox, and they're all different animals. That was great. I love that one, and obviously the Lion King when it first came out. Bless his heart, I remember my dad getting me a copy of the Lion King for Christmas, and I was really excited about it. And he'd got it off his mate, like who'd made a dodgy copy, and it was almost unwatchable. And I just have such a one of those few, thankfully, Christmas memories where I was so excited about something, and then it just came like watchable, but it was not what it was supposed to be. And the look on my mum's face looking at dad, just like, you prat.
It wasn't watchable from the sound of it. It wasn't
for the sake of a few quid, you could have got the proper version, but no.
Well, I mean, the Tim Burton remake was, I think, one of the first things I actually bought on Blu-ray, because often it's animations that really come out in Blu-ray because of the color and things like that. And I think I hadn't seen the film when I bought it, and this is back when I don't know. I don't know what the average Blu-ray costs nowadays. I mean, funny enough, I'm looking back at my VHS collection, and you mentioned things like the Aristocats. Some of these things have still got the label on, and these were like £12.99.
Yeah.
And like that was a lot back then.
It was certainly a lot more than it would have been today. No, but I mean, when you factor inflation into things, I think
they sell for more than £12.99 now for kitsch collector value.
Yeah.
But I don't know what I paid for the Blu-ray of Dumbo. Maybe about £8, something like that. And it took me pleasantly by surprise. It was good. I looked at it and I thought Tim Burton, Danny DeVito. Well, I enjoy their respective work down the years. Please don't let Dumbo be the start of a hatred for both of them. And it wasn't at all. Good,
because I especially the modern version, I'd heard I think it was Mark Kermode talk about how it was fairly bland and uninspired, and just yet another one of these cash grab Disney films to exploit your childhood sort of thing.
Well, it is in many ways, but I quite enjoyed it. I guess I can't really put it more purely than that.
Exactly.
And maybe it's because a theme park was involved that they decided to bring a theme park into it, and I thought, Tim Burton / theme park / sort of Blu-ray. I mean, this only came out a couple of years ago, I think.
Yeah, they went the right way for you then, definitely.
I can't disagree with Mark Kermode there. And there's something coming up later on where I very much agree with Mark Kermode. And if you're listening, Mark, keep listening, because it'll be worth it.
I hope he is listening. I doubt it, but I hope he is. I'm sorry to sort of almost piddle on your parade, but yeah, I liked it fine, but yeah, it never really obviously touched me in the way that it did with you.
I think, like I say, twofold. There was the original sentiment of what it meant to me back in the day, and so of course that still carries through to today if I watch it. But then I do genuinely think, as a story and as a philosophy on life, there are a lot of important things said in this film, which Disney have done, time and time again. Sure, we talked about repetition and things like that, and they've done it sufficiently differently many times, reprising similar themes. And I think this was one of the, if not even the first, where these kind of things were touched upon. And clearly I had something about me as a kid to just latch on to, probably not that so much, but just like I say, the imagery, the power in this film lies in its imagery. There's not so much dialogue in this. It's quite short. I mean, it's an hour.
Yeah.
And I've got nothing else to say other than go and watch it again. No matter how many times you've seen it, go and watch it again, the original. And it's my favorite Disney film. There you go.
Yeah, they're all certainly of a very high quality, even if I wouldn't perhaps admit them into the annals of my top 10. All of them, pretty much to a man, are certainly at worst worth a watch. Very good quality animation and all the music that goes into it. They're Disney for a reason,
Yeah, absolutely. And so there we go. And I suppose that concludes our 7 and 6, and it's kind of transpired how I thought it might. This has been a typical hour podcast, I think, from the looks of it, and we've covered 2 each. An
hour of hours, eh?
Yeah, so let's do the same again for 5 and 4, because we're now into the top 5. So, and trust me, Loz, I'm looking at my 5 and 4, and I've got a lot to say about them, maybe even more so than the top 3 in some ways. So, yeah, this is definitely a good opportune moment to break. Shall we quickly cover what we've covered in the sort of the top half of the top 10 each?
Okay, yeah, sure.
So I've obviously made a little note of these as we've gone. So for Loz, we've got in 10th place Silence of the Lambs, followed by The Dark Knight at number 9, Pulp Fiction at number 8, Inglourious Basterds at number 7, and Jurassic Park at number 6.
Indeed.
A very different set of 5 for me. Love Actually at number 10, The Cable Guy at number 9, Pink Floyd's The Wall in number 8, Memento number 7, and Dumbo, which we've just discussed, in number 6. So you do not want to go anywhere for these top 5.
You really don't. We're just getting started here.
And Loz, you obviously don't want to go anywhere. Because I don't know what you're expecting of my top 5. I feel like you probably know a couple of things that might be in there. I feel like I have a couple of ideas of what might be in yours. But again, I've not deliberately not thought ahead. So let's conclude here. and keep it within the kind of the typical format that we've been doing. We'll go for a quick break, and then we'll resume to do, what are we on now? Episode number 7. Is it? Or episode number 6? No, it'll be episode 7, won't it?
Yeah.
I think.
Wow.
And anyway, I mean, yeah, we'll be
we
getting into the top 5. That's more important. The episode number doesn't matter to no man. We'll be getting into the top 5 films, and we'll do number 5. Then we'll do number 5 and number 4, which I can't wait to discuss number 5 and number 4. Okay, let's go. Let's get going. Let's stop this now and get into that. Okay. So, thank you so much for listening as always, and like and subscribe and all that jazz. I don't want to be that guy. Bell. Yeah, I don't want to be the guy that says those things, but I am saying them.
Here we are.
Thank you very much for listening, and we'll see you soon, hopefully.
All right. See you, people.
Bye. Chip, chip, ciao.